Good morning, Life Fellowship. Welcome to the second week of Ignite. Start local, go global. Last week, we began by taking a look at our local partnerships. Those are those entities with which we've connected at a local level that are doing the work of the gospel here in the Lake Norman region. Today, we move to phase 2, and we're now looking at our national partnerships and our national efforts. Last week, if you were here, you got a little brochure, and we'll make sure that you get one at the end of the service if you didn't get it last week, that kind of details our approach and our strategy to missions. One of our goals for this 3-week series is to help you understand the hows and the whys that we are approaching our mission vision with during 2019. And as we do that, I hope that you will then become ambassadors for the missions vision of Life Fellowship Church. When we built these buildings, we were very, very upfront about the fact that the purpose of these buildings is not so that we would gather together. It was not to be a collecting center, but rather it was to be a launching pad. It was to be a sending center, so that when we would come here, we would get our batteries charged, we would get equipped, we would get educated, and then we would ignite and leave the pad. And that is our theme for this season. We started off our year by looking at the book of Acts, the first 5 chapters. Then we're taking this brief respite, this pause in between our study for the rest of the year. These 3 weeks, we're looking at missions locally, nationally, and internationally next week. And then we will celebrate the resurrection of Christ with 3 Sundays in April. Then we will be back in the book of Acts as the church goes viral. It started off early, and then it exploded across all of known civilization at that time. And so we want to be part of that ongoing wave, that ongoing mission that God gave the church when he said that you're to start in Jerusalem, go to Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the world, taking the gospel wherever we go. And today, our generation is uniquely positioned to be able to fulfill the Great Commission in a way that no other generation has known. Because of the internet, because of telecommunications, because of jet travel, we can literally encircle the globe multiple times every year if it's our desire. In fact, we can do that every day through Skype and FaceTime and the internet. And so we need to ask ourselves, are we doing all that we can for taking the gospel into the harvest as Christ commanded us to do? Our challenge for you is for you to be involved. You say, well, I'm not about to surrender to be a missionary. I'm not equipped to be able to go to this country or that country. And if you are thinking in those terms, then you are thinking too narrowly about the opportunity you have to be involved in missions. Every single person in this room can be involved. We outline that for you. First of all, we can pray. Sometimes I'm concerned that we always hit the term pray and we go, yeah, you have to say that. You're a Christian. That's what God told us. And we almost dismiss it. But every great missions movement, every great wave of revival that has ever taken place has been preceded by a prayer revival, a prayer emphasis. This morning in our first service, we had a couple of Moravian pastors that were visiting with us today. The Moravians came out of Eastern Europe, and they were some of the very first missionaries to circumnavigate the globe. And before they went out, they began praying for 1 full year, 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year, and then they sent their first missionaries out 300 years ago. And by the way, from that day to this day, they have continued that prayer. And for 300 plus years, the Moravian Church has supported their missionaries all around the world, presenting the gospel to unreached people, and they have been praying as they went, unstopped, unhindered, for over 300 years of continual prayer. Now, as we look at missions, locally, nationally, internationally, we invite you to join us in prayer as well. The second thing we do is we ask you to consider the partnerships that we can be involved in. And that means aligning yourself with others who are taking the gospel and consider that to be a part of their mission. Parachurch organizations, people within this church, people who are a part of this church who are now taking the gospel in other areas, people you may have known in your past who are missionaries. And as we will see over this 3 weeks, we literally have people that used to go to church here at Life that are doing just that vocationally and as lay ministry, locally, nationally, and internationally. And truly, the impact of Life Fellowship's ministry is a 24-hour a day, 365-day a year outgrowth of what we do here on a regular basis. The third area is provision. And all of us have that opportunity as well. We can provide support through our time, treasure, and our talents. We can volunteer our time to local agencies. We can involve ourselves by being a volunteer, even with agencies in our general vicinity. And we can support other areas financially. We'll talk more about that in just a few moments as well. And so the prayer, the provision, the partnering, and the provision are part of our head, heart, and hands approach to missions as well. We take 3 different tacks at it. We know that in this current culture, the post-Christian generation that is coming up, sometimes called the generation of nuns who do not have any allegiance to religion at all, have no fellowship or relationship with Jesus Christ, and who doubt there is a God or don't believe at all, that generation is a generation of cynics and skeptics. If you work with college students, you know it's the reality. And we can get frustrated with that, or we can tackle it head on. We choose to do the latter. We want to take the truth of the Word of God, the unchanging, inerrant, supernatural Word of God, this Bible, and teach people why they can trust it, to answer their difficult questions with a smile and with clarity. This is not a book that it consists of stories and fables, but it is the words of God. It doesn't contain the words of God. It is the Word of God. It never changes. It is always true for all people in all generations at all times. And we can have confidence in this book. And there's a reason why. There's a good reason why. And we need to be able to explain that. That is our ministry to the head. Then we also know this. If you're hungry, if you're thirsty, if you don't have a place to stay at night, if you don't have a way to earn a living and take care of your children, all of the talk about God and all that doesn't matter as much because you're concerned for your day-to-day living. That's where our hands can get involved. And that's where we can serve. And we're going to show you some ways, even now that we're preparing so that we can send out servants to be able to help to the communities that are in distress. That's why we're having the Tea Party in April, where we can partner with people who are being drawn into the sex trade industry in Southeast Asia because of desperation. And we can help prevent that by using our hands. But the most important part is the heart, because the heart is the gospel. Everything we do is about Jesus, his plan for our salvation, his sacrificial death and resurrection, the fact that he's coming again, the fulfillment of God's promise that what Satan tried to destroy, God will restore. Without that, we're just simply social justice warriors. We're do-gooders. We're Samaritans of some sort, but we're not missionaries. Without the gospel, we take good works and make them mean very little. But with the gospel, we take good works and we model the gospel. That God cares about us and loves us and has a plan for our life. So with our heads, with our hands, and with our hearts, we approach missions. And we do that locally, nationally, and internationally. Last week we looked at our local partnerships. Join me now as we look at some of our national partners. Notice how many of them came right from Life Fellowship.
Hi, we are the Blevins.
We support Bible translation through Wycliffe here at JARS
to ignite the flame of Jesus in the hearts of people all around the world.
Come see us here at JARS and see all the great things that God is doing all over the world.
Hi, my name is Mary Kay Portero with the Safe Families for Children Ministry. Safe Families temporarily hosts children and provides a network of support to families in crisis while they get back on their feet. We hope to ignite you to join us in this journey that is changing families' lives.
Fellowship. Fellowship of Christian Athletes is a student-led organization that has groups that meet on campuses across the entire country. And here is a student leader from Davidson who's going to tell us a little bit about FCA on Davidson's campus.
Yeah, so for me, FCA has literally been an opportunity to have a platform to share my faith with my peers, and also just to have a community in a place that is can be hard to find that Christian community and really grow in a time that's super important in our lives. So FCA has definitely been tremendous in helping me grow and learn how to share my faith, and vice versa for my peers.
Hey Life, my name's Sam Hatfield and I work with Timberline Ministries out in the Colorado Rockies. Timberline is a one-year Bible school with students who come from all over the world, study God's Word, and learn what it truly means to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for your continued support of me, my family, and this ministry, and please join me in praying that God would continue to use this place to ignite the youth of the world. Thanks, see you guys soon.
Life Fellowship. It's me. Remember this mug? I'm so thrilled about giving my focus now to doing more with the 1 Minute Apologist. And that's going to mean that this ministry grew to what it did with not a ton of attention, but we're going to be giving it more attention to provide more credible resources for the curious questions that you have. And so we have a weekly podcast. We are going to be producing small group videos series for the local church. There are many things that we're working on at the 1 Minute Apologist, and we just want to say, be praying for us, because you know what? We're just getting started here, and we want to say a big hearty thank you for being with us throughout these videos. And how cool is that? 1,000 videos. God bless.
Hi, my name is Thomas, and I am on staff with Young Life in the Lake Norman area. Our mission is to meet high schoolers right where they are and share the gospel with them. We always have a need for adult leaders to come alongside of us and ignite a curiosity in our high school friends. Come see me after the service if you have any more questions. Thanks.
I'm Josh Brown, the president of Equal Rights Institute, which exists to train pro-life advocates to think clearly, reason honestly, and argue persuasively. We use speaking, writing, YouTube videos, and campus outreach to help pro-life advocates, especially in the areas of practical dialogue tips, pro-life philosophy, and relational apologetics, all in order to help ignite in our movement a passion to be more like Jesus and to have more gracious and productive conversations.
So those are just some of our national partners, many of them right from Life Fellowship. Several of them and others will be in the lobby as you leave today. We hope that you go by, visit their tables, encourage them, sign up for their information sheets, leave them a little love gift if you want, and let them know you're glad that we are partnering with them, and encourage them if you would. Last year, if you'll remember, in 2017, December, we took a special offering, and we were doing several things at that time. We were making up for a little bit of a budget deficit. We also wanted to invest in a couple of projects here at the church. One of those was the idea that we wanted to put together a rapid response support trailer so that groups of people from our church could get to the front line of disaster and be able to be salt and light, bring the gospel, and bring a helping hand to communities in distress. I'm going to ask Brad Schmidt, if he would, to come on up. And Brad has been owning this project in recent months. And as you came in today, hopefully you saw a silver trailer that's sitting out front. On your way out, please make sure that you do see that. Brad, tell us about what that trailer is all about, will you?
So I'm kind of excited about this ministry. It's been a long dream of mine for something like this to be put together. It started out when we were doing works in Huntersville and Smithville, where we would go and build handicap ramps and kind of help people out who needed help. And I think over time it's kind of changed, but the vision has not just that, but also to now add a rapid response trailer to it. And so just a few weeks ago, got the clear go ahead and initial funding for the trailer to upfit it. We were blessed about a year ago to actually purchase the trailer. And it's a work in progress, and I kind of laugh because when I say that, after the first service, we were out there, and there was a lot of people that had gathered in a trailer, so much so that when everyone was standing on the back side of it, it started to do this. So it's a work in progress. We need to kind of figure out the back stabilization part. But right now, it's tooled up so that every tool is battery powered. Right now, the nail guns, the backpack blowers, the chop saw is all 12 volt or is all battery powered, so that when we go into a situation where there might not be power or fuel, we'll have solar panels on top of the trailer to charge our batteries so that we can respond. So yeah, kind of excited to see this go.
So the vision for this is that men and women who like to run power tools can take those skills and go to various communities, both locally and regionally. Kind of explain maybe a couple scenarios where that might be the case.
So one scenario would be a local one, maybe a couple hours away, where a tornado may have touched down, and maybe several people's homes have been partially destroyed, where we might have to go and patch that house so further damage won't happen. Or we might go to a longer term kind of situation where a hurricane has gone through, and we could send up a team initially to set up a home base, and maybe that trailer is going to be out there for several weeks, and we could have more than one team go out there and replenish and help people out.
Yeah, and even here in Smithville, many of you participate in the Smithville initiative that we do every year, usually in April, and we go over and we help repair homes for some folks who are in difficult circumstances. Sometimes they're elderly or handicapped, and even sometimes people in the church have those kind of needs for wheelchair ramps and so forth. In fact, I had somebody this week tell me, I was a pastor in a mountain community, very small rural area, and many of the people in his church are older, and he needed some work done. And he goes, do you know of any church that has like a team that could come over for a weekend and help us out and be able to do some repairs around here? And I'm thinking, I think I may have somebody in mind. So these are the kind of opportunities we have. What do we need to do until it's completed?
So one thing is we need to complete the tool up portion. We still have plenty of stuff that we need to actually supply the trailer with, but we're also looking for people who have the ability to maybe go for a longer term stay, or someone who may be able to serve on a weekend. We need people who not only are good with their hands, but maybe someone who's just wants to be an extra hand. But most importantly, I guess it's the mission that we're there for. We're just not there to fix something or build something. We're to change lives, and that's through the gospel. So the whole mission is not only are we building something, helping them, but we're taking them by the hand, praying for them, and sharing the gospel with them.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brad. Appreciate it very much. Brad is going to be in the trailer or next to the trailer, and he'll have a sign-up sheet. And if you would like to be on the contact list with him to be able to get information and be a part of that, if you want to take a look at what we have. By the way, we're not doing this second class. This is done first class all the way. And this way it can be reliable and stable and something that we can use for many, many years. So I hope you'll go out and visit him on your way out and be a part of that. Last week, we also did something. We're going to conclude it next week, but every week of these 3 weeks that we're doing this, we're talking about church planting. And this is an exceptionally important facet of missions because that is what churches do. Churches reproduce by producing more churches. Last week, we talked about the plant that we're going to be doing Life Fellowship in Mooresville and what that's going to look like. Next week, please plan on being here. You don't want to miss this. David Nelms is going to be here, and he is a church planner I'll tell you a little bit more about internationally. So we're going to be looking at that. But this week, we're looking at a national approach. I'm going to ask our vision teaching pastor, Ben Rudolph, to come. He oversees our church planting initiatives. He's going to talk to you about a fresh vision for church planting here right in the United States. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Dan. Over the last 13 years, I've been involved in church planting. It's been a part of my life for my wife and I and our family. And when we came here to Life Fellowship, one of the reasons why we came here, that the elders brought me here, is to fulfill this vision to be a church planting church. And so January 6th was on our Vision Sunday. We were able to cast the vision of what it means to be a sending church. And it was during that time that we shared with you the 110 in 1 initiative. That if we want to do more than just have sending initiatives, we want to have a sending culture. And that means that really it begins with every single one of us. That 100 represents 100% of us, every single person, every place, every day, that we are living as missionaries where we live, learn, work, and play to take the gospel to every man, woman, and child. And that is something that it has to be ingrained in us. And that so that it's not just something that we can turn on and off the light switch on and off when there's an opportunity, but we're doing this every day, and that the sending flows from who we are. And so that's what the 100 is. The 10 is that when we have that planting initiative, that we have at least 10% of our people, a tithe of our people, that will leave our church to go start that new work. Because the needs around the Lake Norman area are great. And then that 1% is the percentage of people, the one that represents the 1% that not only leave our church, but leave our context. And the reason why I think that is so important to me is, for me, I'm a Yankee, okay? Get some amens, fellow Yankees, all right? We've ruined this entire area for all you native people. When I meet a native person from Huntersville, I'm like, oh, you're real, you know? But I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm from the northeast area of Pennsylvania. Scranton, Pennsylvania is my hometown. And so one of the things that a couple years ago, I got the chance to go back and visit. And it's an amazing thing when God combines your passion, your gifts, your burdens with a gospel need. And so when I went up to Scranton about 3 years ago, and I was there visiting and helping this small group of church plants, about 10 church plants that were looking to build a network together to reach the Northeast. And it's a huge vision. But I was there to help them with some soul care issues with some of their leaders. And it was during that time that God just really laid on my heart the need for the Northeast. And many of you have come down from the Northeast to the Bible Belt. Sometimes we forget what a dark place the Northeast is. I want to share with you a couple slides, just the realities of the region where many of us are from. But the 9 states of the Northeast, that's what the area we're talking about here. One of the most lost places in the nation. And if you look at the next slide, the statistics of the nones, those who don't classify themselves as having any religion, has almost doubled in the last 10 years. A lot of that percentage is even higher, concentrated in the Northeast area. A couple statistics I want to share with you. First one is this. I know in the South, even though there's need for church planting here, if you'll see the Tennessee in Georgia, or Kentucky and Georgia, 800 to 1,200 people per church. Here in the Lake Norman area, it's about 1 to every 1,200. So we fit right in there with that Georgia area. That's a Bible Belt norm. But look at the Northeast. You have 6,000 to 8,000 people for one church. That's fascinating. And it's sad. But that's the reality of this nation. That's the reality of where the growing, thriving part of what evangelicalism was is now dead and dormant. A couple other statistics that you might not be aware of. Every single day, 14 churches close their doors. Every single day, 14 churches close their doors. We are not planting enough churches nationally, not only to keep up with that statistic, but we also have an increase of 3 million people every single year in the United States, which simply means this: we're not keeping up. And we've got to start thinking differently about our resources to say, what are we going to do about this great need? And the reality is this: even churches that are growing, that's a rarity across the board. The far majority of churches, 90% of them, have plateaued or are declining. So here's the harsh reality of the harsh reality of the gospel need in the Northeast. A couple slides to share with you. Only 4% of New Englanders go to evangelical church. There are some cities in New England that have a less of an evangelical presence than certain cities in India. That's the reality of New England. The top 5 states with the lowest belief in God are in the Northeast. 5 of the 6 states with the worst church attendance are in the Northeast. 8 of the top 10 post-Christian cities are in the Northeast. And then 20 of the top 30 least Bible-minded cities are in the Northeast. I share all that with you to say the need is great. And one of the things the reason I'm sharing this with you is there's a new network that is forming in the Northeast called the Northeast Collaborative. And God has allowed me to be a part of that strategic initiative that's up there. And what we're looking to do in the Northeast Collaborative is not only plant churches across the Northeast, but also revitalize churches who are maybe plateaued or dying. Because we believe the need is great. In my hometown of Scranton, only 5% of the population goes to an evangelical church. And that's the harsh reality of my hometown. That burdens me. That I want to do something about that. And one of the things that the reason why I bring that up is the reason why we're introducing the Above and Beyond initiative here for this church is so that we can help and partner with the Northeast Collaborative. So that we can start not only sending our resources, but partnering. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if we sent a team up there in the Northeast, did mission trips, national mission trips. Maybe even some of you are called to do something about the need of in the Northeast. And so one of the things that we want to do is always make you aware of these things. So because one of the things that we never want to become is we never want to be a church that has the vision doesn't extend beyond the parking lot. We want to be a church that has a vision beyond our parking lot, for not only for our community but our nation. This is reflective of God. Everything that God creates multiplies. If you look at Genesis 1 or Genesis 2, when he creates man and woman, what he says, be fruitful and multiply. All throughout God's scripture, when Jesus compares the kingdom to that seed that when planted produces a crop 30, 60, 100-fold, you see multiplication natural to the kingdom. When we look in the book of Acts, 3 things that are mentioned that multiply in the book of Acts: the word of God, disciples, and churches. So here's what I know. Everything that God creates multiplies. And if we're going to be obedient to being a type of church that God wants us to be, we've got to be a multiplying church. Not just planting Life Mooresville, but being a planting church that is reaching some of the hardest places in our nation. So I want to encourage you to prayerfully ask God, what can we do about some of the greatest needs that are even in our own nation? Dan's going to come and finish off our service.
I want you to know this about Ben Rudolph. Ben is one of America's emerging voices on this issue of church planting. He's done it, he's passionate about it, he's educated about it, and now he's challenging others. And we're so blessed to have him. And the models that we're looking at are not MIC churches. They are not franchise models. Without trying to criticize anybody who does it differently, you understand that a franchise model has a big mother church, a big mega church, and then they have little franchises all out, like they do with a McDonald's or Burger King or whatever. These are churches that are being started in communities where they don't have a gospel witness, and they're being started from the ground up, changing the level of Christ-centeredness of the community, not rearranging places from other places, Christians from other churches, but starting a bulwark of believers and letting the church blossom out of the seeds that have been planted. And this is what we're about. And so we talked about last week, Mooresville, this week, national, next week, international. Church planting is at the heart of our missions. But we also partner with other organizations. And again, I'm so thrilled that there's so many of these are making an impact. And sometimes we don't know the impact they're making because we don't hear the stories. I'm going to ask a very special guest to come and join me on the stage right now, Melissa Gibbs. And Melissa and her husband, JD, have been active in a group called Young Life. They have a table out in the lobby that you'll want to go by and visit. We saw a greeting from the Young Life director. But JD and Melissa Gibbs have been ambassadors, so to speak, and involved at the ground level of Young Life. And I wanted her to talk about that today. So let's go on over here and have a seat. And many of you know the story of the Gibbs family, and JD and Melissa have been here since before we were at CSD. And JD was a deacon at our church, and a little over 5 years ago was diagnosed as having a very, very serious neurological disease, and he went home to be with the Lord in January. And Melissa's just one of the most incredible wives and mothers I've ever known. As such a strong. By the way, her mom and dad are here. Everybody give them a greeting. Let them know they're here. And 2 of her sons, Jason and Taylor, are sitting over there, and she's got 2 more sons, Jackson and Miller, who are at App State right now. But and so she's had a lot on her plate for several years, the care of JD and family and business. And JD was the president of Joe Gibbs Motor Racing, and so just living in the spotlight a lot. Their heart, their passion has been largely focused on the ministry of Young Life. In fact, if you were at JD's memorial service in January, you heard some stories that absolutely will impress you with the work that Young Life is doing. In fact, we took a couple of clips. We want you to see those right quick.
My trust in JD and admiration for his convictions led me to visit Young Life Club. Young Life met every Wednesday night at different students' houses at our high school. And that particular Wednesday, it was going to be at JD's house. Well, I wasn't a Christian, and I certainly didn't think I belonged to such a group based on my state. But if JD was going to have it at his house, it was going to be okay. And there I was. I got there early, and I hung upstairs with Mr. and Mrs. Gibbs, Coach and Mrs. Gibbs. They made me feel welcome, even though I told them I have never owned a Bible or ever prayed out loud. They assured me that I would love it, and to calm me down, Coach let me wear his Super Bowl 17 ring. It worked. Here I am at my friend JD's house, having a blast, laughing at crazy skits, and hearing about how much Jesus loved me. I'd never heard that before. Shortly after that night, I would commit my life to following Jesus, all because JD loved me. He knew what I needed before I did. JD lived out what he believed every day. He was a young man of impeccable integrity, a rarity, as Coy said. To God's glory, JD never outgrew that quality. Coach and Mrs. Gibbs, thank you for the young man you raised. His faith and friendship showed a lost, lonely, and scared high school kid that Jesus Christ was not only real, but cool too, and worthy of being followed. I credit JD and the ministry of Young Life for my salvation. Rick Beckwith, our Young Life leader, is here today. He brought the ministry to our high school, but JD was the one that lived it out in front of me.
Arguably the most popular kid at our school, our quarterback would show up often in the cafeteria and randomly sit at different tables, usually with kids less popular than he was, with that signature smile and a "Hi, I'm JD." He made the kids who needed it most feel valued and important. I know that because it's how I felt when he sat with me. When most high school boys were focused on being seen with the right people, JD Gibbs was focusing on seeing the people that were yearning to be seen. He taught me early the power of influence. It should also surprise nobody that JD's senior superlative was, in fact, Sunniest Smile. JD invited me to a Young Life Club meeting at his house, the same one that Moose talked about in the Gibbs' basement. Rick Beckwith, our Young Life leader who's here today, read a story from the Bible and talked about having a relationship with Jesus. I can tell you I was interested in none of that, and I had no idea what a relationship with Jesus even looked like. But I soon came to realize it looked like JD. That's what was different about him. Like Melissa said, God mattered to JD, not just on Sunday.
So Melissa, that's a powerful legacy.
Thank you.
And testimony. For you and JD, Young Life was a part of your growing up experience, and it was substantial in his own maturity. Tell us a little bit about that.
JD would credit, as David Moose said, his relationship with the Lord to the ministry of Young Life, despite the fact that he was raised in a Christian home and was churched throughout his entire life. It wasn't until he was mentored and discipled by his Young Life leader that it really took root in him and took on a different texture. I did not grow up in the church, and it was through JD that I even met the Lord, and then through Young Life that I sort of learned how to be a Christian.
That's cool.
And live it.
And so what Young Life does is it reaches people where they're at, and if that slipped on you, you can just go ahead and it'll be probably okay. But
I'll hold it.
But the cool thing about using organizations like Young Life, they come alongside of parents. And you've got 4 kids, I had 4, and you could say things over and over and over and over to your kids, and it's it kind of drones on, right? Mm-hmm. And then you partner with someplace like Young Life, they're saying the exact same things that you want them to hear and you've said to them, yes. But all of a sudden they listen.
Yes.
And so, how do they reach these kids in the high school? How do they function?
Young Life is carried out by typically college students, but often adult career leaders as well. And they just show up at the high school and at the football games and sort of meet kids where they are. It's a different model than what the church is doing. And we're especially grateful when churches do partner with us, because oftentimes churches and the Christian community are confused by Young Life because they figure we're already doing youth ministry here. We have youth group and Sunday school, but Young Life is going after the kids who would never enter the church building. And Ben was offering some stats about the nuns, and that's nationwide. That's not just in the Northeast. The percentage of kids right here in Lake Norman who aren't at church on Sunday morning is huge.
Yes. So young Life workers are literally missionaries to the schools.
To the foreign culture that is high school.
And in some cases, that's more hostile than going overseas.
Yes.
It literally is. So, and you and JD, having had your life touched by that, have been involved all your life with it. Tell us some other ways in which you've been involved with Young Life.
That's right. The two of us were leaders at Myers Park High School for 3 years in our early marriage. And then in 1999, went on the local community as we were starting up Lake Norman Young Life, and we have remained involved in that. JD was on the national board for a number of years before he was unable to participate anymore. Yep.
And a couple of things, she's so modest she doesn't tell you. They've literally let the Young Life staff live in their basement.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like, they've got a big business and they got, they're high profile and 4 kids and carpooling everywhere and all this kind of stuff. And oh, by the way, let's have a stranger live in my basement as well. And not only that, a few years ago, right before JD became ill, they opened a restaurant over in Huntersville, and the intention of that was to take the profits and to be able to invest back into it. And then JD's illness came along, and so the restaurant isn't there anymore. But this is your passion, this is your heart.
Right.
And in fact, one of the ways that you have wanted JD's legacy to continue is directed toward this. Tell us a little bit about the legacy.
We had created something called the JD Gibbs Legacy Fund. And by virtue of the service, the memorial service that you saw clips of, and the fact that it was live streamed through NASCAR.com and was posted on Facebook, it has now been hit, I think, 3.2 million times and watched in its entirety about 100,000 times. And we've heard of quite a few salvation experiences as a result of this, and people have been moved to give to JD's Legacy Fund. And we're just shy of hitting $1 million, which would be a really cool thing. Thanks. That money is going to be split evenly down the middle between Windy Gap, camp in the North Carolina mountains that we frequented most as a family, and our kids are still attending as high school kids. And the other half will go to fund underfunded ministries in the Charlotte area. They have a program called Young Lives for teen moms, Capernaum Ministries.
Tell me a little bit more about the Young Lives. That was fascinating.
Oh, Young Lives. Yes, they will run camps. Well, obviously they're doing the relational work before camp, but the ministry of the camp is the phenomenal part, where they literally are putting together 150 cribs, 150 high chairs, strollers and whatnot.
So
and
this
have
is for
to bring,
moms with unplanned pregnancies.
Yes.
This is a very pro-life thing they're doing.
Yes.
They always want to say, well, you pro-lifers don't care. Oh, yes, we do, and here's the more evidence of it,
yes.
Right?
And we have to recruit enough volunteers to go and babysit all of these babies so that the moms can go and do some fun things, but also sit in on club and hear the gospel preach to them.
Excellent. So you mentioned Windy Gap, and Windy Gap, some of you have been there, and I used to take a group of high schoolers there every year. Probably, in my opinion, the most beautiful camp I've ever been to. It's nestled up right outside of Asheville. What's special about that place to you, and why is that one of the places you wanted to focus the JD Legacy Fund toward?
Well, we have a lot of family history there, but aside from our involvement in it, Windy Gap's just one of the original camps, one of the flagship camps. Young Life has, I wish I knew the exact number, but quite a few camps across the United States and international. Young Life is also kind of tricky where to put us because we're local and national and international. But Young Life, Windy Gap is one of the first ones. And they take camping very seriously because it's such a unique opportunity to change the life of high school kids because you get them away from their distractions and their people back home, and they hear in a different way. So they really make an effort to make camp a first-class experience, and it's resort camping. It is not tent camping.
Right. One wonderful things about Windy Gap is a beautiful, serene setting. I mean, the heavens declare the glory of God, and when you're there, you just feel closer to the Lord. Right. There is no cell phone coverage, so you have to disconnect. And you said they collect their phones.
They do. High school kids cannot have their phones at camp.
And so the first 2 or 3 days, they're doing a lot of twitching, having to disconnect. But then they can hear.
Yes.
They can hear.
And in addition to the use by high school kids, I had someone come up to me after the first service and said, family camp, what's that about? That's something that they do in the spring, and camps are geared, instead of the high school audience, they're thinking about younger kids and parents. And if anybody is interested in a really fun weekend with your family,
absolutely, it's
in early May.
Absolutely. Well, the Young Life table is out in the lobby. We want you to see it. And Melissa, we just want to emphasize again during the course of your journey, because obviously it's no secret you come from a high-profile family, everybody knows your name and whatever, and we always try to protect folks like that who attend this church because they need to have a life, they need to have a relationship, and here they're just friends, they're not celebrities, right? But at the same time, we're praying for you, and we love you, and we love your kids. You got 4 of the finest young men I've ever been able to come across, and just anytime I was at Tenders the other day and bumped into Miller, and just what a great kids your family is, and we just want you to know as a church we love you, and we want to encourage you, and a year ago we started this idea of what could we do if we gave a little bit above and beyond our tithes toward missions. And I just kind of did an introductory to it, nothing like what we're doing this year, but just kind of an introductory to it. And some folks started giving toward it. And through that, we were able to do some of the work on the trailer. We had a gentleman who donated the trailer, actually. And so we've been able to do a couple of things. And the elders and I were talking about how much you all mean to us, and JD, serve as an elder here, and just in so many ways you provided so much leadership. So we've taken some of the funds from that, and we've got a check for $5,000 to help move you toward that $1 million goal.
Yay!
And I just want to thank you so much for your life and your testimony. So,
thanks, church.
All right. Let's thank Melissa and Young Life again.
All right, this one's hanging off.
That's fine. All right. And folks, this is the impact we can have if we just come together and are generous and share and partner and pray with. You see, the Gibbs aren't special because of their industry or whatever. They're special because they have a heart for others and they care about the gospel. And every one of us has the potential to be that. We can be the partner with that parachurch organization. We could be a Blevins family who said, we're quitting our jobs and we're going to go work and make sure the Bible gets translated into every language. We could be a Josh Brom who's homeschooled and learns about pro-life issues and say, I don't like the tone. I think it's unnecessarily negative and critical and puts people off, particularly in today's culture. I'm going to change the way we talk about abortion in this country. And he's doing it. And he's doing it. And he's here on Sunday, and he plays the keyboard some weeks, and all week long, he's on college campuses making a difference. Now, our question for you is, we're the next ones. We're the next ones. Will you pray will you partner, and will you provide? In the seat in front of you, and if you were here last week, you got one of these, and it had a card in front of it. If you didn't get one of these, by the way, on your way out, there will be some ushers at the doors. Just ask them for one of those, and they'll be glad to give you one of these. We want you to use it to pray. It talks about everything we're planning on doing, what we are doing, what we hope to do in the future, all kinds of great information about our missions vision. But inside that, there was also a card that looks like this. And either you brought that one with you today, we had a whole bunch turned in the first service, or it's in the pew in front of you, or pew. Listen to me, man, I am so old school. I haven't sat in a pew in a 20 years, and here we go. But anyway, in the seat in front of you, there is the Above and Beyond prayer card. And if you would, take a look at the back of that, and here's what we're asking the church to come together and consider during this 3-week emphasis. Number one, will you pray? Will you pray? And again, the idea that, oh, yeah, of course you got to pray. No. Prayer is essential to what we're doing. And so will you join us in praying? The second thing is, will you be involved? You say, I don't know what that looks like. Neither do we. Neither do we. In fact, the Lord may tell you. And by the way, it doesn't have to be about us. I mean, many of the ministries in this church are launched because of people getting a vision and a passion for it in the seats in the church. Not through us. We're just partners. We're facilitators. The work of the church is the work of the church, not just the church pastors or the church budget or the church elders. It's the work of the church. And we're going to applaud you, and we'll be excited for you. We'll give you counsel if you want it, and if you don't, we'll stay out of your way. We just want you to go do the work of the gospel, do the Great Commission work, wherever that is in your corner of the world. And that becomes then the church multiplied and makes the impact. So will you do that? And we'll just send you opportunities from time to time. Here's a missions trip. This is a need we've got to take the trailer. We need some men and women who will go run power tools for a week. Here's another. And so we'll just give you that information on a special email list. The third area is, yes, I will invest. I'm going to help provide. And as I mentioned last week, this is between you and the Lord. And I don't want you to feel pressured. I just want you to feel interested. And I believe if you're interested, you'll look for opportunities to make those kind of investments. We truly live in the richest generation, in the richest country in the history of the world. And you say, well, not me, it missed me somehow. I'd really challenge you to just look at all the things you've got in your life and ask you, are they 100% necessary in light of eternity? And in that, could you give $1 a week, $5 a week? Could you give $50 a month? You know, recently, and the Lord equips different people with different levels. You know, I wished I could sing. I can't sing, so I'm not going to sing for Jesus. I'll sing for Jesus down here, but you don't want me with a microphone in my hand singing. That's not my skill, but I'll talk you till your ears bleed. That's the way God created me, all right? So what is it that God created you to do? And for some people, it's giving. Just 3 weeks ago, I had somebody send me a check. They didn't even hand it to me. They sent it to me through an emissary in an envelope. I didn't even open it for a couple of hours. And it was a check for $30,000. And you know what it was? We believe that Life Fellowship needs to be on the internet while the services are going on so that people can see what God is doing at Life Fellowship, hear the messages, so that when people are on vacation, they can sit in their hotel room and watch it. If mama's sick with the kids at home, they can watch it. And so in a few months, that's going to happen because somebody was generous and they gave. The trailer that we have out there. The trailer we have out there, somebody gave toward that. The podcast studio that we're putting in, somebody gave, helped make that happen. So my question is, what's God laying on your heart? It doesn't have to be a bunch of zeros. It could be the widow's mite. But do we care? Do we care enough to say, I'm going to intentionally give above and beyond for the sake of the gospel? And if you will, just let us know what that is so we can plan for it. We're getting ready to go into budgeting. April's my budget month. I'll be knee-high in spreadsheets in just a couple of days, all right? As we prepare for the next fiscal year, which starts in August. But as we do that, knowing this will help the elders make good decisions about allocating the resources for maximum impact, starting local, going global, igniting the gospel flame. So if you can fill that out and drop it in the offering plate either this Sunday or next Sunday, we'll tally them up, we'll tell you what's going on, and we hope to ignite something great for the gospel around the globe, even greater than it already has. So next week, we're going to look at international partnerships. We're going to have a variety of them featured here, but our primary one is going to be Pastor Dr. David Nelms. David Nelms is the founder of an organization called the Timothy Initiative. They have taken the challenge of training church planters primarily in the 1040 window, but in other places as well, where the gospel is not being reached. You can take an American, send him over there. It takes him probably 2 to 4 years to become fluent in the language. It takes him about $100,000 a year in financial support. And even then, he's going to speak with a thick accent and try to live uncomfortably and stick out the entire time. Or we can go in, find committed disciples who have a passion for reaching their fellow people and will then go through training and start a church in their home. And some of those churches never get bigger than 10 or 15 or 20. Some of those churches explode and become churches of hundreds and even thousands. Most of those churches have another guy in the church who gets equipped and goes out and starts another and another. And since we started doing this, tens of thousands of churches have been founded across the country. And here's the kicker for it. It costs $300 to train the pastor to plant the church. For $300, we literally train a pastor. They don't get any money after that. We don't support them. We don't pay them to preach. But they begin doing it in their own home. And next week, I'm going to show you a very special way how all of us, and it's going to start with me, can you imagine what it might do for your family, what it might ignite spiritually, if you say during 2019, we're going to make it possible for a national pastor to be trained and plant a church because we're thoughtfully intentional about the Great Commission. So I don't want you to miss next. By the way, full disclosure, this guy's name is David Nelms. David Nelms used to pastor a church in West Palm Beach, Florida. The name of that church is Grace Fellowship. This is the guy who took that church over when I left that church in 1999 to move to Charlotte. And that was the church that I pastored and worked there for 17 years. This church is a missions crazy church. They have scores of people that used to sit in their seats and who are now living in Africa, in India, in Europe, in Asia, who are part of church planting movements, spreading the gospel, and spreading the gospel in an igniting way. And so that is my former church. He was there for 10 or 12 years, started the Timothy Initiative while he was there, and now he has taken it independent, and it is exploding. And so we want you to be a part of that. He'll be here next Sunday morning, then Sunday night at 6 o'clock, he'll answer questions. I think you'll really want to hear that. He's just fascinating, the stories he's got. Just to absolutely keep you awake at night just thinking about him. So next week is International Day. Last week local, today national, next week international, then we go into the Easter session. So my question for you is this. Is God doing anything in your heart? Is he stirring you? Is he showing you how you can get involved? Can you partner with one of these ministries out here today or from last week or maybe next week? Open your hearts and just say, here I am, Lord, a vessel ready to be used.